mentioned, we don't want to completely deceive the extraterrestrial civilizations, right? But we do want to put our best foot forward. And if Dan is on his first date, maybe he doesn't have an incentive to lie to that partner, but at least he wants to seem nice enough that the person's going to agree to go on a second date with him. And that's essentially the crux of what we're saying on our side of the house. But before I get onto that, right, so in my speech I'm going to talk about two scenarios, right? I'm going to talk about, first of all, let's assume that this information never reaches anyone because we're not sure if it will, and I'm going to explain to you on a principled level why we think it's important that it should be predominantly positive. Second of all, I'm going to talk about the practical side of this debate, what happens if we actually do encounter some kind of extraterrestrial life forms, and why we think this is the best way to go about that. Before this, a little bit of like characterization and rebuttal. Because the case that we get out of opening government, right, is the idea that we need to use this as some sort of historical documentation, which we can then use to improve our civilization in the future. And it's broadly analogized to history, right? But the question I wanted to ask opening government is, what do you think is the difference between a history book and this chronicle that we're using in like space exploration? What is the difference between space exploration as a whole and a history lesson? And considering I didn't get a chance for them, maybe they can answer the next speaker, but I'm going to tell you already, we think that the difference on opening opposition is that space exploration is about idealism, it's about hope, and it's about something that like humanity can strive into the future. So we'd say that it's different to history in a number of ways. But first of all, right, we would say in terms of this history analogy, that history itself is often whitewashed and inaccurate, and often represents things that are more positive for particular groups. So we don't see any real reason why this particular chronicle should be all that different, right? We think that we'd say that nevertheless, humanity can continue to learn from its mistakes, which it learns about in history, right? Whereas in this particular case, we would say we'd like to aim for something a little bit more idealistic. We'd like to give a very positive and hopeful depiction of what humanity is, because we think that's something that's really important to the human race. So that brings me nicely then onto my first point in principle in this debate about why space exploration is about idealism. So I'm going to talk about first of all the impact on humanity, and then second of all the external impact in terms of why principally we should do this. The first reason is, right, so we think that actually this chronicle will, as opening government already concedes, right, this chronicle will probably be published and probably will have some sort of impact on humanity's perception of itself. But the difference is we wouldn't like humanity to think that they're going to have such a negative view of themselves portrayed out into space, because we think that's a very disillusioning thing to happen for humanity as a whole. We actually think it's more likely that the human race can achieve more if they set up a positive image of themselves, a positive picture that they can then aim to try and achieve, than if we were to send something that is necessarily quite negative. The second reason for this, right, that's really important, is there's a time lag here that the government haven't taken into account in this debate. So when we're talking about sending something in the 1970s, which is then going to be like the image of humanity portrayed to space for like probably the next couple of hundred years, right? Given that this isn't a thing that we're doing regularly, given that it takes a really, really long time for this information to travel across space and so on, you're essentially taking one snapshot of humanity in one generation at one point of time, and then portraying that on and on for many, many generations into the future. So we would say, on a purely principled level, we cannot send negative images of humanity out in such a way that is then going to affect future generations, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know if the problems of 1977 and the discrimination and things that happened in that particular point in time aren't going to be like solved and improved in the future. But then at the point at which this does potentially get encountered by someone, or at the point at which people on Earth are continuously seeing this and knowing that this is the way that their planet is being portrayed to external forces, this is no longer an accurate representation, right? So this is why we have a problem with the fact that OG says they want to do something like put in World War I sort of like imagery of what's happened in the Holocaust and so on into this. Because first of all, why should the whole of humanity have the responsibility for that, to have that negative portrayal of them? But second of all, why should all the future generations also have that on them as well, right? We don't think that under the status quo that the current generation of Germans should still be feeling like necessarily guilty about what happened in the Holocaust, because it's not necessarily related to them, and no longer should the future generations also have to deal with that. So we think that we can say that this has really a negative impact there, and we don't think that we have a right to do that. But third of all, right, we would say we as humanity have a right to determine how we want ourselves to be portrayed externally. In the same way that I can get up in the morning and put on my clothes and look the way that I want to look, or when I meet someone for the first time, I can, or at a job interview, right, I'm not obliged to come out immediately and explain to them all of my flaws and all the horrible things that I might have done 10 years ago, right, when I was at primary school or something, or high school, gosh, a bit older than that. We think that along the same line, we very much have a right to determine our the way that we are portrayed externally. Go, Jamie.
Roughly what proportion of humanity actually experienced the fluffy niceness?
I don't know, maybe 50%. I'm not a statistician, but the point is, right, it's what I just explained to you, is that this is about hope. And it's not about what humanity is, it's about what humanity would like to be and what humanity can achieve in the future, right? I think that's really important to say. But the second thing here is the external impact. We would say that actually, if we're going to send information about ourselves into space, we would prefer to spread positive values than negative values, right? So we're not sure who's going to read this or what's going to happen, but we would say that if other people were to see this, we would like for them to know that it is possible to have a nice society that cares for one another, that people can get along, because then it gives them an idea that's something that they can aim for, and we would maybe be able to improve other people's lives as well, which we think is a really nice thing. So, second of all though, what if there really are aliens? And what if they find our message, right? Why is this important for us? We would say, first of all, we think that if we are going to enter into any kind of diplomacy with extraterrestrial beings, that it should start on a positive note, right? We think that we're far more likely to have good relations with other planets, rather than hostile ones if they think that we're generally nice people. By the way, right, this isn't as far-fetched as you think. In the last month, we have actually found a particular place in space where life could exist. So we're not saying this isn't that crazy. It could potentially happen, right? But second of all, right, let's imagine the aliens aren't so nice, right? We don't want to give them too much information. We don't want to give them the most accurate picture of our planet possible, because that is then going to make us more weak and susceptible to if they decide they do want to invade us for our nice natural resources. When they have a complete picture of what our planet looks like and what our weaknesses are, they're far more likely to be able to do that. We'd rather protect ourselves, right? We'd rather give them as little information as possible, but what we do give, to seem that we're nice and peaceful, so that they don't actually attack us. We agree, right, with opening government that we're not sure what the values of these beings would be and how they're going to interpret the message they're receiving, for sure. But we can tell you for sure that positive things that are nice and fluffy, it's very difficult to misinterpret them as a threat or a sign of war, an invitation of invasion, right? So we would say that, from a purely practical level, we should try and make sure that we put our best foot forward for that first date with the aliens. Proud to oppose.